today. And Wake Forest, 57 points. Virginia Tech in overtime back on Tuesday, March 5th, 64 points. You know, their defense has really been stepping it up lately. So I got to tell you, I'm not excited about betting that over. Just to let you know that I know Virginia must have went over today when they scored 76-56 at 132 against NC State. I'm not sure what that line was actually. Maybe it was. Let's see where it closed. 131.5, so barely went over. But I'm definitely not excited about. I wouldn't be excited about trying to take that over there. All right, now that we've covered that, let's get into a little bit of UFC action with our man, Cub fan Danny. All right, now we have our buddy back to break down a little bit of UFC Fight Night 147. You can tweet him at CubFanDanny. How are you doing, bud?
Hey, man. It's been a long time, and I'm glad to be back.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I'm glad you're back. I know it's been crazy busy. We try not to miss UFC events. We've always hit the big ones. But I'm really glad you're coming on because after everyone wins all their money on Saturday for the college basketball games, now they can even make more listening to some of your advice, my man.
Yep.
What kind of card we have this weekend?
Hey, so most people might not know, but if you don't, I'll just give you a little education here. UFC was with Spike, and then it went over to Fox, and they started getting Fox Sports. They started getting a little bit bigger. They ultimately ended up signing with ESPN this year, right? And what's good and bad about it is now UFC and MMA fighting is actually getting a little bit more buzz in, with people in general, right? But kind of the downside is it's on ESPN Plus, and people say, hey, well, I don't have ESPN Plus on my cable provider. And you're saying, you don't, right? You got to pay for it. It's $6 a month if you want it, right? But there's been some really good cards. They've done a good job. I mean, there's been a few here in the past few weeks that they've thrown on there, and you can get a free trial for 7 days. You watch it. You don't want to watch anything else after that. You cancel it. But, sometimes it's better than paying for a pay-per-view fight at $65-$70, right? So now everything's on ESPN, so it's getting a little bit more buzz. And honestly, these fights are fun, right? And really what UFC does with their fighters is they take these guys that are established names, guys that are everybody knows, and they put them on these UFC Fight Night cards against the guys that are coming up, right? So up-and-comers against these old guys coming in, and you could really do well with these fights, right? Because everybody bets the main cards. Everybody watches that. But not everybody watches all the cards. Not everybody looks at the value on these cards and say, man, there's some money here. I could do a little bit. I love this fighter here the last time I watched him, and you can make some good money, right? So it happens quite a bit, right? So I like watching these cards, especially for the up-and-comers, and also, hey, look, you can make a couple of bucks at the same time and getting some good odds. And so when I looked at this card here, man, it was all over the place, right? There was a lot of fighters that I really liked, and there was some that I really hated, and I go, oh, man, I'm not going to touch that one. But here, there's some value in this card, okay?
Nice.
So here's the deal, right? So UFC does a really good job for the fans in Europe. When they're out in Europe, they stack the cards for their hometown guys. Okay, so now here coming up this weekend, it's going to be in England. Okay, so they're stacking this card with guys from Europe, right? And they typically fight guys from the United States or Brazil, and that's kind of a good thing because the whole entire crowd gets behind their fighter. Okay, and it's a fun atmosphere. I would love to go to England for a week, watch a couple soccer matches, and then go to a UFC fight with their guys fighting. Oh, man, that would be a bucket list thing for me because the fans there are so passionate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I look at these fights and I say, man, I don't believe in hometown advantage for UFC fighting, for MMA fighting, really, because it's, they back a guy and it's good. But when an entire country is backing somebody, I always take a step back and say, I think there's something here, and sometimes that gives these guys a good advantage. So it's going to be a fun card coming up this weekend. But I got a couple picks here for you, and I really like them a lot. So I've already put money on them, and I've already got my numbers down on them. So I'm going to share with everybody here today.
Fantastic, my man. So ESPN has the monopoly on the UFC now. You're not going to see any more FX or anything like that.
Nope.
FS1, it's all ESPN Plus, so you have to buy a little subscription there. But like you said, it's less than paying some of those pay-per-views. But I like the card too, man. It looks like they're going to have some better fighters, so that's important. So that's fantastic. So who are you looking at first here?
All right, guys, I'm going for value. I want to give people some value this weekend, right? And it's easy for anybody to say, listen, I got 100% on these fights. And I go, who'd you pick? Well, I got the guy that was minus 700. The other guy was minus 650. Listen, I'm going for some value here this weekend for you guys, okay? So, listen, we got the first fight coming up here. It's going to be on the undercard. It's going to be a little bit early if you're on the East Coast. It's going to start somewhere around 1 o'clock or so. If you're on the West Coast, it's going to be a little bit earlier. But we're going on the undercard here. Danny Henry is going up against Dan Ige, okay? First, like I mentioned before, a hometown, right? Look, Danny Henry is from England. He's British, okay? So, walking into this fight, the stadium might not be full, but people are in there will be rooting for Dan Henry. Danny Henry is really big for his weight class, right? He's a 145-pound weight class, but he's a 5'11", right? I'm 5'10", 6 foot with heels on, but 145 pounds. I haven't been 145 pounds since junior high, so he's really, really big for his weight class, right? He towers over these guys he's fighting. Now, look, this guy only has 2 fights in the UFC, but both are very, very impressive. One of always the down things with England fighters from England or those guys is their wrestling is not good. Their jiu-jitsu is not great, but man, they all have massive heart. They all have a fist of steel, right? And cinder blocks are punching you. But watching Danny Henry in his last 2 fights, the last fight, he put a shot on somebody and then took him to the ground after that and choked him out. Hey, he's a complete brawler. Right? And I go, this can't be how the guy's fighting, right? This guy's not a plus 120. There's no way. Let me watch the fight before that. My gosh, it was even more impressive. Even though it went the full 3 rounds, it was impressive. He got guys to the ground, and I was like, man, I really like this guy. Mm-hmm. Really, really like it. There's 2 fights in the UFC. They have 800 fighters, right? So how did I miss him? So I go, look, I know Dan Ige. I watched him before. I think he's a really good fighter. I've seen him a couple times. Look, I watched him. He's 2-1, right? He lost his first fight coming into the UFC, which is expected. That's understandable, right? Second one was really impressive, man. It was a quick fight. He knocked the guy out. The last fight was right? I see Dan and Dan Ige, and I just don't see dominance, right? He has a BJJ, he's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but on the ground against lesser opponents that aren't supposedly black belts or not even close to his, he doesn't dominate him. He doesn't do anything like that, right? After his last fight, he won the fight in a decision. He gets up there and goes, you know what? I woke up and I don't know. I just didn't feel it today. I didn't feel like fighting, right? And I go, my gosh, it's your 3rd fight in the UFC. You woke up. You don't feel like you're fighting. I was floored by this. I go, you're a fighter. Your last fight, you destroyed somebody. The fight before that, you got beat up and you lost a decision, right? Your first fight, I'll give you the pass. But how does that happen, right? So what's going to happen when he goes to England and the entire country's behind Danny Henry, right? So listen, I'm going to take it right now. At plus 120 with Danny Henry. I've already put it down. I love Henry in this fight. I'm taking this plus money, and I'm running with old Danny boy. I think he's going to win this fight.
Nice. Is this? Do you think this is going to be a fan favorite? Is this spread going to go towards 0, or is it going to go towards possibly even get a little bit better for us?
Listen, I think it's gonna stay pretty close to where it's at, and really because it's an undercard, and like I mentioned, when you don't know somebody's name, you don't want to put money on them. Nobody's doing research on these guys, unless money's coming in from some foreign company, from some foreign country, someplace. I think it's gonna stay pretty close. Listen, I personally would jump on this now, and if it goes a little bit higher with Henry, I'd jump on it again. I really like the guy a lot. I think Dan Ige's a nice guy. Ige's a nice guy, but you know what? Danny Henry, with his size and how he's punching people and hitting people, and his third fight in his own home country, my gosh, I really like him a lot. So I would take him as soon as you can. If it jumps a little bit and you're feeling a little bit rambunctious, you want to jump on it again. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure it's going to stay around the plus 120 right now. If it drops to 110, but I'm pretty sure it's going to stay at the 120.
I'm seeing it at 125 on 5 dimes. So
there you go.
You got that account. You better jump on it right away, my man.
Go shopping, guys.
What do you have next?
Perfect. Okay, second fight here. We've got Gunnar Nelson against Leon Edwards. All right. Gunnar Nelson is actually the underdog in this fight against Leon Edwards. Okay. Gunnar Nelson is a legend with Icelandic. Is that how you say it? From Iceland? Icelandic people, right? They absolutely love the guy, right? His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is absolutely amazing. Second black belt in BJJ is unheard of, right? He's very, very slick. He finishes fights, right? You want to watch a guy that finishes fights? You watch Gunnar Nelson. If you like to watch guys getting choked out, you watch Gunnar Nelson, okay? Now, he gets you on the ground. He gets somebody on the ground, the fight's over. It's like watching Damian Maia, right? Damian Maia can be a boring fighter, but at the same time, it's really effective. If you're a guy that enjoys jiu-jitsu, he's your man, right? Damian Maia. But Gunnar Nelson is a little bit better than Maia in this sense with his stand-up, and he's much younger. Okay, he did lose to Maia in a decision, but listen, at this point in his career, he's much better with his stand-up. He's very aggressive, right? And he's usually a favorite when he fights, right? So it's very rare that Gunnar Nelson is a underdog, all right? So when this number came out, I was blown away. I said, oh my gosh, there's something going on here. What's happening? What am I missing here? Right? So I'm doing my research. Now I'm going back to look at the fights. Mm-hmm. Right? So listen, you know the last time that Gunnar Nelson was a underdog was in 2016. And guess what he did in that fight? He won with a submission in the second round. Okay? Before that was 2015. So it was a couple fights before. He was an underdog again. Guess what he did that fight?
Submission.
Yeah, but this time in the first round, right? So first round, second round, underdog, right? So this guy is never an underdog. He's been around a while, okay? So, look, he had a terrible fight against Ponzinibbio, right? He was fighting in England. Ponzinibbio came in from Chile to go fight in England. He's coming down from Iceland, right? He's the guy. Everybody's backing him. And I'm not ashamed to say that I put money on Gunnar Nelson on that fight just because of the pre-hype fight, and I fell into the trap that I tell everybody not to do. I fell into it. And guess what happened? Knocked out. Mm-hmm. First round. That's the first time and only time he's ever been knocked out or submitted or anything in his life. He lost a couple decisions, but everybody that happens to everybody. But this is the first time ever. He just got caught, right? He was very aggressive that fight. He got caught, and he ended up losing against Ponzinibbio, which is a guy that could potentially be a champion, right? So, Gunnar Nelson has fought the best of the best, okay? He's not an old guy. 29, 30 years old. He's got some fights under his belt, but those fights are all against guys that are at the top of